Good morning, community. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. Welcome to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite Wilson, C-Suite Trusted Advisor and Board Director, helping other members of the C-Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Today, my guest, and I'm so excited to have her, is Ms. Pat Wadors with UKG. She is the CHRO. So I understand that inclusive design is the key to your success. What is that? Explain that to us. Inclusive design.
It's about that co-creating I was mentioning earlier. I want to look at it from all fronts, like which voices are missing at my table.
Yes.
Right. And so if I realize there's a demographic, a perspective that's missing that I think needs to be present to add to that stew, add to that outcome, then I got to slow down to make sure I'm inviting that voice in whatever fashion I can. So maybe I pause the brainstorming and say, okay, let's go and these stakeholders, I need to vet this idea with them and co-create with them. It doesn't mean all the time that I take on their points of view, right? But I think that if you're inclusive in your design and your thinking and your co-creating, that whatever I initiated is like 10x better because of that input.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that I have a plan B and a plan C, if not more, because there are amazing ideas out there. I didn't think of that. And so I meld together some of the input I get, some things I put on the burner because, I can't use all of it. And I'm grateful for all I've learned. And I echo what I've learned. And so the next time I come asking for feedback, they're like more likely to lean in, like, ask me. And so that's a huge deal. I think user acceptance testing on the technology side has to get more robust. And same thing with marketing and organizations. I think inclusiveness means you're thinking through it all. You can't be all things to all people. You just can't. You have to make sure that every opportunity you have, you make it more robust. Like this time I was pink, next time I'm gonna be a little more purple, this time I'm gonna be blue, this time. Like you can see this evolution, this robustness is coming out in the colors and how we express ourselves. It's a journey, not one event. And when people hang up on one event, I think that's when conflict arises. Like, this is my only time to have that input. I'm like, no, it's really not. There's probably 12 million times we have it together to have an input. So let's slow our roll again. Let's figure out the bigger picture, know where we're going, get there together. That's inclusive.
I even appreciate how you said stew instead of salad, because in the early days of this work, people would always talk about, oh, we're a beautiful salad, right? And even though you had all the ingredients in there, you could still pick out a pea or a carrot or corn, right? But with a stew, everything is like blending together and the flavors season each other so that there's a hint of something, but it all makes one delicious flavor. And right now, what I'm thinking about is when you invite participation from people and jointly you investigate perceptions, then you can integrate perspectives and you have a more well-rounded worldview to go in and make decisions that are really phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's a journey without a destination.
Right.
It is a journey, and that's why it's a hard one. This is hard. This is really hard because you teed it up earlier also, if I'm echoing, the different generations, where someone came from, their learning. You look at this gentleman's intent to connect with you, and that's celebrated with your smile, by the way, right? And he's going to open up more next time he sees you in that corner. And then it's going to talk about what are you cooking for dinner, and then what are you doing this weekend, and he's going to learn about you and you about him. So a door was opened. So generational life experience, the communities, the cultures they grew up in at work, like how did they show up? How were they invited or not invited? All that matters, right? And if I talk to leaders and or employees, some of them are bruised employees. And I started using this language, I don't know, about a decade ago. And the reason why I started using it is because they're not broken. They're just tired. They're bruised. They got hurt, and that bruise isn't healing, and I can feel it. And I want to unlock them so they're happier at work. What does that do? How do I do that? And so leaning into that and saying, look, I can see you don't trust. I can see you've been hurt by something. How do I help? What can I do differently to unlock your joy? And that to me is the journey. It just, like I said, I wish there was a destination. I wish I could check a box because I love my brain lights up when I accomplish something.
Me too. You write something down that you didn't and check it off because you got it done.
I'm like, I made a bed. Check.
Right.
Something done. So, but the journey, you need to check yourself to say, what part of the journey are you on, and where are those moments of joy? Right.
When you talk about the journey, I've been thinking a lot about the importance of leading by unpacking. When we along the journey, we come to several different stops along the way, and it's an opportunity to unpack and repack and figure out, well, I didn't need to bring this after all, maybe I'll leave this behind. But it's so important along the journey that we kind of reevaluate at those destination points. And especially when it comes to leadership, the journey is so much different than it was back in the the days of the suits, as they'd say in the 60s, right? You don't just expect people to leave their personal stuff at the door, come in and work, and then pick up their personal stuff on the way out, any more than it's ever been realistic to say when people leave the office, they're not thinking about it anymore. Sure they are. I mean, we are integrated human beings who happen to either be doing things at work or doing things at home, but our brain doesn't segment like that. And so it's really requiring leaders to lead the whole person. And when you mention bruised individuals, it takes a leader to say, what's going on with Pat today? Because she's not showing up like she normally does. And to just be human and give Pat the space to be human and say, I'm okay, and not share, or you know what, I appreciate it. This is what I'm going through. Or to say, you know what, I need some help. And it just seems so natural today, but a few decades ago, that just wasn't the case. What do you suppose has changed so much?
I am grateful. This is going to sound odd. I am grateful for the pandemic. Right? So the pandemic, I think growth comes with tension. I think in tough times we grow. Easy times, you're just kind of sailing along. Tough times is like you're really being tried and true. You're like learning some stuff and learning from your mistakes. I think the pandemic created this like really huge pause in the business world, for sure, about the whole human. And it made us learn an accelerated pace about mental health and why it's okay not to be okay. It made us learn about checking in as managers. How are you today? How's your family? How's your health? Things we would never talk about. Right? We had, on top of that, George Floyd. Right? We could not avoid these conversations. And so now you're like layering on all these life experiences in a way you cannot turn away from. For that, I am grateful. So we grew faster in 2 years because of that. I mean, I just reflect back. So in the beginning of the pandemic, we sent people home really fast. That was an easy decision. And then when you have social unrest piling on and managers are overwhelmed, they don't even know how to lead a distributed workforce. The managers were hit hard. They were unprepared, nor were we prepared to teach them because we didn't know what to teach. Like everything was blind. We were perfectly imperfect in care, but we were blind in terms of all the things we should be doing and how to do. And I remember, bringing resources to bear for my employees and thinking through, you have employee assistance programs, you can get counseling, you can get this support, that support. Like, I want to meet my employees where they are. And I don't know where everyone is. So I'm trying to get resources to them. And then it was interesting. My Black employees came to me, a couple of them from the ERG. And I remember the call, I'm like, I know you care. I'm just not getting the care.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean you're not getting the care? Like, I've set all of this up. Like, I'm like in my head going, I'm really trying. I don't know what's missing. They're like, there's no one like me. on the other end of that Zoom call. There's no one like me on that phone call. There's no one that's walking in my shoes, Pat. And I don't know how to connect. I've got to teach, guide, and then connect. Like you're giving me too much steps. Mm-hmm. I need someone to, like, a warm hug on that other end of that call, mm-hmm. right when I start, because just to ask for help is hard in my culture. Mm-hmm. And this family had this other issue going on. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I was not aware of the demographics of my ecosystem. My team and I dug in and changed it. It was like, what an awakening. And I wouldn't have known if people didn't, like, hold a mirror up to me and say, look, on this journey, it's not working. Yeah. But yeah. I'll leave it at that. I've learned so much.
I'm touched because I get it. And I can tell just in the amount of time that you and I've spoken that you get it too. And I thank you for that. Really quickly, share with the community how your passion for belonging in the workplace was ignited years ago as a young ball player.
Yeah, that's funny. So I've always thought since I was younger that I was different. Mm. And for various reasons, I struggled in school. I was labeled as lazy in my family, not so smart. My brother is like 12 months older than me. He would get A's, and I'd be like, I can't do that. And so I've always struggled in some ways and found my joy, my confidence in sports, and I found it in art, things that you could not grade other than like through physical activity and output. Mm-hmm. And so back when I was at LinkedIn, I was asked to speak on a panel about diversity. And as an introvert, panels are fine. Q&As are fine. I don't get as anxious. And then this moderator said, do you mind giving a TED-like talk about how you feel about D&I? And I'm like, gosh, no one's ever asked me how I felt about D&I. I don't know. She said, you don't know, you want to speak? And I'm like, I don't know how I feel. Like, I've written affirmative action plans. I cut my teeth on that when I was a young HR person. I know the reports I have to do. I know the programs. I know how to be inclusive in process. I don't know how I feel right now. And so let me think about this, because feelings is very personal, as you know. And so I did not realize when I said that to her, because I had the other panelists on the call, like there was like a sucking in of air going,
where is she going with this?
Yeah, what did she just say? So I'm like, I realized they just expect heads of HR or people that do our craft to know how they feel about this. Mm-hmm. And I challenge anybody to ask them how I feel about something. You're going to get perhaps a different answer, a deeper, more honest answer. So kudos to her. Mm-hmm. And so I came back. I did not sleep that night. And what I realized is that D&I is necessary, but not sufficient. That everything I've been doing, because I've been doing it by the book. I'm like, obsessive compulsive on process. That's how I overcome. I'm dyslexic. That's how I overcome some of my processing disorders. I'm very organized. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I was not hitting what I wanted to hit. And I was disappointed in D&I. That's how I was feeling. Mm. And I'm like, why am I disappointed in D&I? And then like 3 a.m. in the morning, it dawned on me that when I felt fully embraced as who I am and my quirkiness and my gender and my whatever, then I'm happier, more joyful, more productive, just more. Just say more. And the first time that happened was I was trying out for a Little League. This is 1972, y'all. So look, it was before women were allowed to play baseball. It was all boys. So I had short pixie cut, and they thought I was a boy. I was called Bob all day long, and I had my first crush. So the reason why I'm trying out is to hang out with my crush. And so my brother's like playing along with it, kind of embarrassed, but whatever. I don't think not any of us thought what would happen at the end of the day. Like, you're supposed to get on a team. Yeah. I never thought that far. I just thought it'd be kind of funny, be a boy, play and hang out. And so halfway through the day, I realized not only was this fun, but I'm really good. My brother was a pitcher and I was his catcher when he would practice for years. And I was really good. And I was fast. I was a tomboy. This was my jam. And I got picked on the #1 baseball team, the Braves in New York, as their catcher. And so, I was like, Bob this, Bob that. And my sisters came to pick Ricky and I up and they were like, Patty, yay. And so it was Patty who?
Like, oh, you're blowing my cover.
Patty Bob, what's the diff? Right. And so they tried to kick me off the team. And my sisters were my advocates. So I learned about advocacy. They're like, no way. Where does it say in the books? They just toe to toe, nose to nose. Like where? So they flustered. They're like, fine. They couldn't find no girls allowed on their handbook. So they took me. But the kids were mortified that I was on their team. And so they stole my new catcher's mitt my parents bought. And we didn't have a lot of money. So stealing my mitt was a big deal. So I had to borrow a righty mitt, throw, catch with my left, take the mitt off, throw with my left. It was a big deal, but I didn't quit. And then one day I got a kid out at second. We won the game. It was the first time they invited me to pizza after the game. It was the first time I was their secret weapon. I pulled out my hair as pigtails. Like I was like rocking the girlyhood. And I belonged on that team. And I'm like, that sense of belonging, being wanted because I was different. I've been chasing that my whole life. I want that sense. And if I can pull belonging into D&I, we've got magic. Because then I will add, I will speak, I will have joy. So belonging means a lot.
About 2 or 3 years ago, when I very first came across who you are, I'm like, she's talking about belonging like I am. I need to get to know her. And you were so very gracious to accept my LinkedIn connection. And we talked and I finally got you on the show. And I'm so very grateful. This is a perfect place to stop because community, when we come back and pick up the conversation with Pat, we're going to talk about diversity washing and box checking and balancing culture. And you don't want to miss that conversation. We're having a real conversation from the C-suite with Miss Pat Wadors, the CHRO at UKG. Please come back and join me. In the meantime, if you want to hear this one again, you know where to go, dranita.com, and look for the link in the top center of the homepage, Keeping It Real podcast. And in the meantime, please subscribe, like, share. And if anything from this conversation or any of my other conversations helps you to reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different, please share with your network. Until next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.